It was early June 2011 in Forest Hill, South London. 42-year-old Shaun Corey, a Lancashire native, was known as a devoted family man, a hard-working, loving son, brother, dad, grandad and friend. On the evening of June 3rd, Shaun paid a visit to his on-off girlfriend, 42-year-old Karen Otmani, at her flat on Stanstead Road. Neighbours remember the night echoing with the sounds of a heated argument coming from Karen's bedroom. Shaun and Karen's voices raised in anger behind closed doors. That argument would be the last time anyone ever heard Shaun Corey's voice. After that night, Shaun vanished without a trace. In the days that followed, Shaun's sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through his close-knit circle. He wasn't the type to just go off-grid. Family and friends grew anxious when calls to Shaun's phone went unanswered, ringing endlessly before diverting to voicemail. His elderly mother and siblings in Lancashire felt in their gut that something was terribly wrong. Shaun had promised to visit his young grandchild that week, a promise he wouldn't break unless he couldn't keep it. With each passing day of silence, their worry deepened. Soon, Shaun's loved ones alerted the police and filed a missing persons report, fearing the worst. A police inquiry quietly began, but with no clues and no sign of Shaun, there was little to do but wait and hope. When the truth was eventually uncovered, it would shock everyone involved and leave a family and a community asking why. As the sun rose and set over those early days in June, Shaun Corey's family clung to hope. They plastered missing person posters on lampposts and scoured the city for any sign of him. His daughter tried to reassure her own children that Grandad Shaun would be found soon. Yet, deep down, dread was creeping in. Close friends retraced Shaun's last known steps. They knew he had gone to see Karen Otmani that Friday night. When asked, Karen claimed she had argued with Shaun and that he'd had enough and left, storming off into the night in a huff. It wasn't unthinkable. The couple had a turbulent on-off relationship, but something just didn't seem right. Why hadn't Shaun, a family man at heart, made contact with anyone since? With each passing day of no contact, those who loved Shaun oscillated between hope and despair. Inside the police station, Detective Chief Inspector Graham Gwynn of the Homicide and Serious Crime Command took charge of the case. Officers carried out routine checks, hospitals, transit records, CCTV, but came up empty. No one had seen Shaun since that fateful night. Nearly 2 weeks of uncertainty dragged on. Friends and family held their breath, fearing that the smiling, gentle man they knew might never come home. Little did they know, the truth of Shaun's fate was closer and far more gruesome than any of them could imagine. As police continued with their investigation, they were astounded by the lack of information about his whereabouts. It was as if he had left Karen's home after the argument and simply vanished into thin air. Investigators who were leading the investigation spoke to friends and family regarding the relationship between Kevin and Shaun, with information coming back that would suggest that the pair had quite a tumultuous relationship, fraught with ups and downs. They were known for having heated arguments and breaking up for various periods of time. This would, at least at first, give some credibility to the account that Karen gave. However, with Karen being the last person to have contact with him before his disappearance, they would continue to monitor her closely to see if any inconsistencies in her story would surface. Karen Otmani was a 42-year-old mother of two, originally from the town of Dumfries in Scotland. She was said to have had quite a turbulent life, marked by a series of stormy relationships and mental health struggles. Diagnosed with a personality disorder, Karen was described as manipulative and controlling, and her previous relationships were described as volatile and inconsistent. She was said to be wholly forceful and often devious, someone who lacked empathy for others completely. Shaun, on the other hand, was described as a kind and caring family man. He was a father and a grandfather, and a man that loved being around his family. He was described by many as kind-hearted and always happy to help, with a trusting nature and a habit of always looking for the good in others. Shaun moved to South London from Lancashire, looking for a new start after a previous relationship had ended, although he had an adult child and a grandchild from said relationship, so would often make the journey home to visit his grandkids' sister and mother, making the fact that he had now gone so long without contact very unusual. Shaun and Karen met in 2007 through the online dating site Plenty of Fish, going on to have what was often described as a turbulent and tumultuous relationship. 1 minute on, 1 minute off, the pair would often be at loggerheads. Regardless, they would always reunite after a fallout, and in 2009, Karen would fall pregnant, resulting in the birth of their son in 2010. A child entering the relationship did nothing to quell the instability, with Karen's deep emotional dependency issues still coming to the forefront and often causing issues, with multiple friends and family describing Karen Otmani's actions within the relationship as controlling and often abusive, and commenting on how Shaun seemed emotionally drained and psychologically tired. Could this possibly explain Shaun's sudden disappearance? Had he now simply had enough of the situation he was in? Could the relationship being so turbulent have pushed him over the edge to the point that he just wanted to get away and leave it all behind? It was a question the police had asked, but it just didn't seem to make any sense. As police continued their investigation, they were desperate for a lead to manifest. At the same time, Karen was displaying some uncannily odd behaviour for a woman who was supposed to be worried about a missing partner. She went about her normal daily routine, running errands and cheerfully chatting with neighbours. She acted like someone completely unconcerned about the whereabouts of a man she supposedly cared for. Then, by mid-June, just a few short days after Shaun's disappearance, Karen began a new relationship with a 48-year-old local man called Keith Jones. Keith was surprised that she wanted to progress a relationship so soon after the disappearance of her ex, but figured she was old enough and wise enough to know what she wanted. On June 14th, 2011, about 11 days since Shaun was last seen, Karen invited Keith over to her flat. Happily obliging, Keith agreed to attend and turned up excitedly that evening. However, the moment he stepped inside, he sensed something was off. Karen was agitated, pacing nervously, and the air was thick with a pungent, sweet, rotting odour that no candle could completely hide. Karen had an abundance of air freshness strewn across each room, and all of the windows were wide open. Immediately, Keith was suspicious. Knowing something wasn't right and pressing Karen for answers, Keith asks directly, "Where is Shaun?" Karen, believing that Keith would understand and that she had gotten away with the crime, points to a pile of blankets in the corner and says flatly, "He's in there." Keith's eyes drift to what looked like a large wheelie bin covered in blankets. He feels his blood run cold. He had just heard the most shocking confession imaginable. His new girlfriend admitted she had killed her former partner and hidden the corpse. Keeping calm, Keith excused himself and left the flat as quickly as possible. As soon as he was safely away, he phoned the Metropolitan Police, his voice shaking as he relayed what Karen had told him. In the early hours of June 15th, detectives arrived with a determination to uncover the truth. Cornered by mounting evidence and Keith's testimony, Karen's facade fell apart. Under intense questioning, she broke down and told officers, "I killed him. He freaked me out and I killed him." With that admission, the mystery of Shaun Corey's disappearance was solved in the most tragic way. Karen was immediately placed under arrest and investigators tore apart the once quiet flat. In the bedroom, they found the large green wheelie bin tucked under bedding, just as Keith had described. When they pried off the duct tape sealing it, the stench of decay burst forth. Inside, officers discovered Shaun Corey's body curled in the plastic container. It was a heartbreaking and horrifying sight. Shaun had been dead for nearly 2 weeks, his remains badly decomposed. The search was finally over, and the truth was worse than anyone had feared. Shaun had never left that flat alive. For weeks, behind the closed curtains of Karen Otmani's small flat, a sinister secret had festered. While Shaun's loved ones searched the streets and knocked on doors, his lifeless body was in fact still inside Karen's bedroom, hidden in a large green wheelie bin and sealed under layers of blankets. For 11 days, Karen lived her life with Shaun's body concealed just a few feet away. Each day that passed, the secret became harder to contain, literally. The bin had been duct taped shut, but the effects of time and decay were unmistakable. A foul odour had begun seeping out, and Karen scrambled to mask it with air fresheners and open windows. The once innocuous bin had transformed into a coffin in plain sight. Karen wasn't entirely alone with her dark secret. An older man named Bernard Bedeau, a family friend she called Uncle, had been present in the flat on the night of the argument. In fact, Bernard had walked in during Shaun and Karen's confrontation and witnessed the situation spiralling out of control. What exactly Bernard saw that night remained known only to him and Karen, but in the aftermath, he became complicit in the cover-up. Bernard helped Karen drag Shaun's limped body into that wheelie bin and assisted in stashing it out of sight. He said nothing to authorities as the days passed. Perhaps out of loyalty or fear, Bernard kept Karen's dreadful secret, even as Shaun's family pleaded for answers. To the outside world, Karen had tried to maintain an eerie facade of normalcy. She went about daily life, never letting on that anything was amiss. But privately, her mind raced for a plan. It would later be revealed that during those days, Karen measured the dimensions of her freezer and grimly remarked that it was too small. She'd need to get another freezer. It was a chilling hint at her thoughts. She was considering dismembering or storing Shaun's remains to dispose of them. In hindsight, investigators discovered that Karen had been talking for weeks about getting rid of Shaun, even asking another boyfriend to experiment with some blue liquid to see if it could knock a person out. At the time, the acquaintance brushed off her bizarre request, not imagining she was serious. Now, with a body found in her bedroom, Karen's dark musings had become a grim reality. During police interviews, Karen details the murder, how on June 3rd, 2011, Shaun arrived at Karen's flat, how they soon began to argue in the bedroom, that the argument then turns physical. Desperate to calm him, or perhaps to enact her long-talked-about plan, Karen fetches spiked beer for Shaun. He unknowingly swallows a dose of Rohypnol, the date rape drug, mixed into his drink. As the drug takes effect, Karen grabs a pair of her tights and ties him to the bed frame. Shaun realizes something is very wrong, but it's too late. The more he struggles, the groggier he becomes. Suddenly, Bernard Bedeau steps into the room. He watches as events escalate. Shaun, half conscious, starts yelling to be let go. Karen can't stand it. She grabs a pillow and a plastic bag, pressing them over Shaun's face. Shaun Corey's muffled screams last only moments. Within minutes, he's dead, suffocated by someone he loved and trusted. Karen's chest heaves as she catches her breath. Bernard stares in shock at Shaun's lifeless body, the gravity of what they have done setting in. Karen, in a detached state, goes to the kitchen to put on the kettle. Yes, after killing Shaun, Karen and Bernard calmly made themselves a cup of tea. They needed to think about their next move. The next move was gruesome. Under the cover of darkness in the early hours of June 4th, Karen and Bernard decide to hide the evidence. In the flat, they have a green wheelie bin, the kind meant for curbside garbage collection. Together, they wrap Shaun's body in plastic sheeting, and with great effort, they contort his body into the bin. Using duct tape, they seal the bin airtight, trapping in the odour of decay. Then they tip the bin on its side and slide it into a corner of Karen's bedroom, covering it with blankets and piles of clothes. From the outside, it looks just like another cluttered storage container. Inside, Shaun's body begins the slow process of decomposition. Fast forward to October 2012, the case reaches London's famed Old Bailey Court. By now, Karen Otmani is 42, facing a possible life sentence, and she had decided to fight the charge, claiming she never intended to kill Shaun, perhaps hoping for a lesser conviction like manslaughter due to diminished responsibility. The prosecution, led by barrister Bobby Chima, isn't buying it. In a dramatic 3-week trial, the jury hears how Karen plotted Shaun's demise in advance, how she literally measured her freezer to dispose of him, and how she enlisted Uncle Bedeau to do her dirty work. They present Karen's own police confession and the macabre details of Shaun's body in the bin. Witnesses recount how Karen lied about Shaun's whereabouts and sold his belongings. Keith Jones testifies about the moment Karen showed him the bin, one of the key moments that cracked the case wide open. Karen takes the stand in her own defence, which leads to explosive moments. She portrays herself as a victim of abuse, saying Shaun pushed her to it with constant belittling and that she only wanted to shut him up for a minute. Under cross-examination, Karen loses her temper. When pressed on the inconsistencies, like how she conveniently forgot about putting a plastic bag over Shaun's head in original interviews, she snaps at the prosecutor. "Don't make me out to be some kind of monster." At one point, she even storms out of the witness box, refusing to answer another question. The judge has to calm the courtroom and urge her to return after recess. It's a spectacle that likely did not win Karen much sympathy from the jury. Bernard Bedeau's defence is simpler. He claims he had no part in the murder. Yes, he helped hide the body, but only because he panicked and Karen begged him. His lawyer paints him as a foolish old man, manipulated by Karen. A portrayal somewhat undermined by the fact that Bernard went along with stuffing a corpse in a bin. Finally, in November 2012, it's Judgment Day. The jury delivers its verdict, guilty of murder for Karen Otmani. Karen stands motionless as the foreperson pronounces her fate. For Bernard Bedeau, there's a partial reprieve. The jury clears him of murder, but convicts him of assisting an offender in the aftermath. Bernard closes his eyes, absorbing the mixed verdict. In essence, the jury believed Karen was the mastermind and sole murderer, while Bernard was an aider after the fact. The following Monday, November 12, 2012, Karen Otmani was brought back before the judge for sentencing. Judge Gerald Gordon addresses Karen with cold anger. Her crime, premeditated and cruel, warrants the maximum sentence allowable. He notes how she callously kept Shaun's body, denying his family the knowledge of his death. Then he delivers the sentence, life in prison with a minimum term of 17 years to be served. That means Karen will be in her late 50s at the earliest possible release. At this, a slight smirk curls on Karen's lips. She thanks the judge, an odd defiant gesture, and is led away to begin her life term. Bernard Bedeau's turn comes a few weeks later in December. He receives a 4-year prison sentence for his role. Not life, but enough to punish his grisly assistants. Outside the court, DCI Graham Gwynn speaks to reporters. Otmani is clearly a manipulative individual. I hope today's outcome brings some comfort to Shaun's family. Shaun's relatives, though relieved by the justice served, are heartbroken. In a statement, they say, nothing will bring Shaun back, but at least we now know the truth. At this point, I just want to send out my deepest condolences to the friends and family of Shaun. May he rest in peace. And if you took something from this video, you might also like to watch the video on screen now, where I showcase 3 of the most unusual true crime cases to come out of the UK. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, when it will once again be time for more true crime.